everybody's perspectives on death. So my talk, as you know, is entitled, just a second, I can't see my words here. All right, can you hear? So the talk is Demystifying Death. I wore my Halloween top in commemoration of this. Little ghosts all over. This is the season of death, after all. Halloween, All Saints' Day, All Souls' Day, Day of the Dead. People don't really talk about death, do you? It's just too scary a topic. Today, I don't intend to scare anyone or make any of you uncomfortable. My intention is that you feel better about the whole thing. And the first step to doing that is to forget everything the church has taught you about death. So who am I to be talking about this? Have I experienced death and come back to tell about it? Well, yes and no. And I'll explain that in a bit. You know, we all know that death is inevitable, but what we don't know is how we die and what happens afterwards. Of course, there is fear around that huge abyss. In any case, death is a fascinating topic, and people have all kinds of questions about it, right? So let's see if some of those can get answered. Now, this information is actually readily available to those who desire to know it. It's no secret. Amazing, huh? There are books and a great deal of channeled information that one can easily find online. I was curious about the topic after I found out that we are spiritual beings living a temporary life in a suitcase of flesh, which at the time was astounding information. But my deeper interest began when I came upon a book called Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton, a hypnotherapist who accidentally discovered during past life regressions on some clients that some deeply hypnotized people were able to describe not just physical past lives, but the time they spent between lives. They were able to recall their transition and then describe in great detail what they were doing in the spirit world. He called this a life between lives regression, or less of a mouthful, an interlife regression. There was so much information available to those being hypnotized, it fascinated me, and I longed to know this information about myself. I knew that it would probably be an expensive undertaking, as hypnotherapists are not known for their low fees. I continued to read everything I could get my hands on, and meanwhile, I began to save my dollars to pay for a session. That took about 3 years, and when I realized I had enough, I started my search for the best hypnotherapist for this. I was not impressed with a couple of them, but synchronistically, I had a client who had done numerous past life regressions, as well as an interlife regression, and I got the name of her hypnotherapist and scheduled a session. However, I had never even had a past life regression done, so first he had to find out if I was able to be hypnotized, not only that, but to a deep enough state to make it viable. And all I saw were dollar signs floating out the window. Luckily, I had been meditating for some years and was doing other work that taught me to step aside mentally and allow higher information to come through. So I had the required past life regression, and it was quite an experience. Right after that, all kinds of information started flowing in. Synchronicities appeared everywhere, and I was more easily able to interact with my spirit guidance forces. Then I was ready for the interlife regression. We started with my last past life, and then I was taken through the death experience. It was totally unlike anything I'd ever imagined. For one thing, it was so easy and so natural. When it was time, I merely took a deep breath and was out of my physical body and stepping through a portal that took me straight to the spirit world. I had obviously done that many tens of thousands of times, as we all have who gather here, and the process was extremely pleasant. The relief was immense. I passed through a waterfall of white light that cleansed all the difficulties of my past life, and my spirit family was all there ready to greet me in a pastel rainbow of light and a joyful welcome home party. It was wonderful to see them all again. I just wanted to stay with them forever. So that's a quick synopsis of my death story. Whether that qualifies me to talk about it or not, I don't know, but here goes. So we have all been in the spirit world in this lifetime. Did you know that? What do you think you do when you sleep? You return to spirit. Sometimes you're sent to help other souls who need it. Do you ever jerk awake, something just caused you to go like that and you wake up? That's your spirit returning to your body after a brief stint in the spirit world. You have been out in the astral world and are quickly brought back to physical with that jerk. Meanwhile, your unconscious ego is put to work dreaming so you can do your astral work unhindered. And it's a pity we don't remember any of this, isn't it? So the death experience on Earth, there are so many ways we can die. The most important thing to know is that we die when we have completed our soul contract. Now, it would be nice to know just what that contract involves, but alas, it is not ours to know consciously. We may have certain exit points programmed into our life where we are given the opportunity to go or stay. People who come away from crashes or some kind of explosive event, it was simply not their time or they chose not to take the exit. The soul is in charge here, not your consciousness. The normal death process. As the soul prepares to leave the physical, the person may begin to see loved ones in spirit. At this point, all they need to do is let go, but that sometimes is very difficult. The loving souls on the other side that surround the dying do their best to persuade the soul to cross over. Come on, come on. Death does not hurt and is as easy as breathing. I think all we need to do is to say, I'm ready, let's go. It's often the case that people will transition, if they're especially sick on ready to die, they transition when they're left alone. If others are always around, it causes them to feel bound to the physical. And you may know of people who passed at the very moment that the family left to get a cup of coffee or to use the facilities. The loving people on this side can keep them in the physical. There are people who cannot bear the thought of losing their loved one, and that can keep a soul from progressing, as the pull of love is that strong and powerful. Let me just say a word about Alzheimer's, because that's a question that comes up. It's possible that Alzheimer's is a result of an otherwise healthy person not wanting to contemplate death because it is too frightening. So they go somewhere else in their mind so they don't have to think about it. In effect, dying while living. Many people just can't let go. That's one theory, so I'm just throwing that out for you. Now, when we transition, where do you think we go? We go to a place called nirvana, which is the term used by spirit for heaven. You may go through a tunnel of white light, but that is not a given. Depending on the circumstances of your death, your passage may be quite fast, or you may need to be led by your guides who lovingly take you by the hand and escort you. Your etheric body and psyche arrive in the same condition as when you left the physical lifetime. So you're still hanging on to the stuff that you have at the time of your death. And your death experience is not dictated by your earthly beliefs. There is no hell. There is no purgatory. Every soul goes straight to the light. Every soul goes straight to the light. Now, once you are in the spirit world, you are welcomed by your spirit guides, your soul family, and those who you are closest to. You have incarnated with the same group of people over and over, so the faces are familiar. Animals, yes. Your loving pets are there awaiting you. They can't wait to see you again. Spirit beings you have esteemed will be there to welcome you too. Jesus, Buddha, God, ascended masters, and your loving, devoted, ever-patient spirit guidance forces who have been with you since you were conceived. You are restored to what you looked like at age 35 or 40, when you were in your prime. No kidding. You can choose another time frame if you like. You create your reality. No one seems to choose to look old. If you have transitioned because of a long illness or a very difficult life, you will be taken to a healing station where healing light is lovingly beamed to you by energy healers until you have regained your energy, which became depleted due to the difficulty of your life on the planet. It can sometimes take quite a long time for souls to recover their energy. Then they are welcomed back into the spirit, their soul family, and spirit life continues. In nirvana, there is no sorrow, no heaviness, no trauma. There is absolutely no judgment in the spirit world because ego doesn't exist. There is relief, freedom, and the ultimate letting go. I think it's extreme euphoria that awaits us. There is no judgment day. Instead, with your spirit counselor, you participate in a life review. You go to the Akashic Library of Records and spend a long time watching the film of your life, reliving each moment of it. And you have a council of spirit beings who help and guide you through this. And with that council, you discuss where you were successful, where you fell short, and what still needs to be learned. This discussion forms the basis for the return to the physical. We do have distinct personalities in spirit. We don't become wishy-washy nothings. And we also have free will. That's in operation constantly throughout the universe. You still have the same sense of humor and outlook and the same interests you have here. Why do you think you have those interests here? Now, once I asked my guide, what am I like in spirit? And the reply was, you are you perfected. Not perfected in the earthly sense of the word, but in the spirit sense. And the only place you can experience that is in spirit. The human condition just simply doesn't allow it. So what do you do in nirvana? Well, as above, so below, that universal law is in operation. The vibration there is higher, so things are not so solid. There are buildings, houses, apartments, public buildings, libraries, schools, temples, and on, just like here. The difference is that they are not as solid as those that are here because the vibration is higher. It doesn't need to be so solid. The buildings seem to glow and are translucent. The architecture is magnificent. Those architects came to Earth and recreated their buildings here, which is why we have these incredibly beautiful buildings like the Parthenon and other magnificent, magnificent edifices. Souls have the same interests there as they do here. Scholars up there may seek out libraries to continue their studies, or they may teach in the educational systems. Musicians continue to make music, and the concerts there are of indescribable beauty. There are lectures, interest groups, sports, anything you can imagine. You move around by teleporting yourself or merely thinking where it is you want to go. There's no traffic. You are all part of a very, very large, loving soul family group, and eventually you, your family, or your advisor may start feeling you need to incarnate again. With everyone's input, you all decide who is coming back as who. So your father may be your daughter. Your brother may be your mother. You discuss what general path your life may take. You incarnate to learn life lessons. But why would you want to leave nirvana? As crazy as this sounds after being on such an exciting planet as Earth, you can get bored in the spirit world where everything is only bliss. Imagine that. To incarnate, we agree to forget our life as spirit in order to experience the physical life again in its entirety. Earth is known as the insane asylum of the universe, and alternatively as an exciting amusement park, and one of the universe's finest emotional schoolhouses, because life here offers endless opportunities to learn. It's also the place where souls can grow the fastest because of the difficulty of life here. But apparently you start to miss the adrenaline rush you experienced on this planet and decide you want to do it again, like taking the roller coaster ride again. Or you simply miss the beauty of Earth, trees, flowers, birds, lakes. Nirvana is also exquisitely beautiful, but apparently Earth is known to be the most beautiful of third-dimensional places. So you begin your journey again. A couple of things that people always ask about is suicide. Again, forget everything the church has taught you about suicide. Souls who have committed suicide are treated with the same deep love that everyone else receives. Suicide occurs because life was too hard for the soul at its level, and the only way out is to end it. If that occurs, they are also given healing until they are restored to their fullness. There is never any judgment, but they may have to repeat the lesson in another life in which the circumstances are a bit more bearable. Evil souls. Big question everyone has. What about the truly evil souls? Adolf Hitler, Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, or another despicable person. These souls have fallen so profoundly from their original intent that they have to either start all over again with life as an amoeba and go through eons and eons of life again. Eventually, they doubtless will be persecuted by those who they persecuted. Or they are such damaged souls that after a self-review, they decide they do not want to live in the light and choose instead a place of lower vibration where they feel more comfortable. Now, this may be the hell we hear about, but it's not the result of someone else sending you there. It's a self-review. And ghosts. Occasionally, someone will die but not go to the spirit world immediately. These are people whose earthly experiences did not include a spiritual component, so they refuse to let go of the earth plane. Or they have died suddenly and are disoriented and lost. Or they are held to the earth because loved ones here will not let them go. They are trapped in the astral plane, which is one dimension up from the physical, and they wander for quite some time until eventually their spirit guides find them and lovingly escort them to the light. Sometimes you may feel the presence of spirit around you, a loved one who has passed, or even an animal. And yes, you can come back to earth in spirit and interact with those who will allow you to do that. If you feel the presence of someone, don't shrug it off. Try to telepathically converse. You may surprise yourself, really. That being said, if you feel the presence of a discarnate being around you, you should always ask, are you of the light? Spirit will always answer you truthfully. And if they are not of the light, then tell them to leave in no uncertain terms. So that includes the talk. I know you got questions, so I want to leave some time for questions. One final thing to think about. You are living your next past life right now. Your next past life right now. So, questions? Yes. Questions? Who's got the microphone? There is Gretchen back there.